Well, good morning and welcome to another little video. Got my new shirt on this morning, so repping Harley Davidson. No charge for that Harley Davidson. Everything in the world always seems to have a charge about it, doesn't it? Costs for everything these days. You pay for your living, or you pay to live. Unless, of course, you live in faith, and then everything just comes, right? Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and then all else will come unto you. And it does, it just comes. You'll never have more than you need, and you'll never have less than you need. You'll have exactly what you need, including a new shirt if you need one. So I've had a couple of requests to talk about drugs, and we'll include alcohol in that as well. Drugs and alcohol. Any other sort of coping mechanisms, we'll bundle it all up. But first I just want to, because I get this a lot of people ask me, what about psychedelics, what about cannabis, what about alcohol, what do you think about this, that and the other? Apart from the basic tenet that you get the results of your own thinking, right, which is what I totally advocate, go out and get the results of your own thinking. Now, and I say that not unlovingly, I say that because I know that it's going to be almost impossible for you to hear what I'm going to say until it becomes your own experience, right? But before I get started on it, I do already have 3 or 4 videos on drugs and alcohol. Hello, birdies. My little family of magpies is wondering if I'm going to feed them. Oh, run away. I do already have 3 or 4 videos on drugs and alcohol and external coping mechanisms such as medicine and vitamins and health food and all of these sorts of things that people seem to put a lot of meaning into these days, which actually doesn't mean anything. But if you think it does, continue on until you come to your own penny drop moment, your own light bulb moment where you realize that you're insane. And I say that lovingly, having realised that I'm insane, or was insane, and am now coming to sanity by the grace of God. So I've got 3 or 4 videos there. Tina is going to put them into a little playlist because they're sort of right down the bottom. When I don't look at my YouTube as playlists or whatever, it shows up for me as my creator studio, and it's kind of a long, there's like 500, nearly 450, 500 videos there now, a long list of things, and I think all those ones are sort of more at the bottom before the workbook lessons. So if that's how you're viewing my videos, maybe not, I don't know how other people see it really. Tina tries to explain these things to me, but I'm not very savvy at in one ear and out the other generally. So I'll bundle everything together. Drugs, alcohol, what else have we got? Friendships, superficial relationships without any form of healing purpose commitment. That's how I want to put those, like fulfillment of bodily pleasure relationships, one night stands, all that sort of thing. Well, everything external to yourself. I mentioned before vitamin pills and health foods and things like that. Now, realizing that the kingdom of heaven is within you and that you are learning to become completely, not partially, completely dependent upon God for your supply and for your living and for your witness to yourself, to your own journey here, learning that you're learning that you're learning, that should be better, learning that you're learning to become completely dependent upon God for everything. It's a process, right? So you're going to find yourself, a lot of people come to the process as alcoholics or drug addicts or whatever, or even if they don't see themselves that way, as maybe people who are fairly well dependent, can't go through the week without a drink or need a joint or whatever it is to get through the day, you know, rather than like that and just letting everything go. It's really quite beautiful and quite simple and quite easy to let everything go. Of course, when you're in the midst of your emotional upheaval and your anxiety and everything else, remembering your purpose is very tricky, which is why mind training is important. Remembering that you're in a process, remembering that you've actually got another way to deal with this is something that, as a newbie, let's say, you're probably going to forget many times until you cross this kind of equilibrium threshold where your mind training starts to mean more to you because you've seen it working in your life than it does as if it's just a book and a bunch of concepts and something you're struggling to wrap your head around. You're not going to wrap your head around it until you begin to apply it in your relationships and see it working. It's the proof of the pudding that you're looking for, right? So as you become the witness to the transformative process within yourself, just naturally all external dependencies tend to fall away. Now, the Holy Spirit is quite gracious, in fact is the source of grace. So you'll find that the most detrimental things to you tend to fall away first. When I had my awakening in 1997, I would have described myself as an alcoholic, right? As a drug-dependent alcoholic, as someone who couldn't go through a day without a drink, without getting drunk at that time. And the closer I got to my awakening, without realizing that I was actually getting close to an awakening, the voices in my head got louder and more vicious, and I started to drink more and smoke more weed and take more mushrooms and do all that sort of stuff to try and get rid of it, to the point where I just wanted to blow my brains out because I couldn't stand what was happening in my head. And that's a relative truth, but it's a truth. That's my truth. You know, that was where I was at. And eventually I fell on the floor suicidal one night in the dark night of my soul, and 3 days later had a complete out-of-body, out-of-world experience, found myself back in eternity, face-to-face with God, one with God, I and he and me. I can't talk about it, you know that, because I've said it so many times. Sounding a bit maniacal there, I know, but it's like it's impossible to talk about it, and I wish I would love to be able to talk to you just with the radiance and the glory and everything. So don't worry. You're in a process, okay? Don't worry. There is nothing to worry about. Like Jesus says in the Bible, it's like, what is the point in worrying? You can't change one hair on your head from white to black. I've got plenty of white ones these days. Through worry, all right? But rather learn to let worry go and become dependent on God, and allow for the miraculous nature of your own internal alignment through the Holy Spirit with the power of creative reality to be that which supplies you what you need in life, rather than you scrambling out there trying to make sense of an ever-changing landscape that's never going to work, right? You're never going to work. Whatever you think you can control out there is only a slow descent into a grave, all right? We're here in watching these videos in order to bring about a process of having maybe a slow ascent, or maybe not a descent, an ascent into another order of reality altogether. An illuminate experience that, like that, happens unseen by the body's eyes, but happens nonetheless. A lot of people like to tell me that they use cannabis as a medicine. And sure, you can use anything as a medicine. A lot of people like to tell me that it makes them feel closer to God and closer to a sense of unity with trees and nature and the world and all of these sorts of things. And helps them to find an ease and simplicity in relating to others. Right? It sort of takes away that social anxiety, etc., etc. Now, when you get to my age, it tends to have the reverse effect. You tend to find that you do become more anxious. And I was relieved, thankfully, by the grace of God. I'm just talking generally from, what would you call it, recovery stories, let's say. But I was relieved of alcohol immediately. Alcohol was the big one. I was relieved of alcohol immediately. As soon as that awakening occurred to me, I no longer had a thirst for a beer or whiskey or anything. It just wasn't in my head to reach for it, to go for it. And I don't know where that went. It was just by the grace of God. Gone. Cannabis sort of dwindled off over the next 12 months. I found that I still had this habituation to want to have a smoke, especially in the evening before bed, because it used to help me sleep better. Well, that was the story I told myself as believing I was a body. But it took 12 months for that to sort of fade away, and it's not something I'm interested in anymore. I'm not interested in alcohol anymore. I'm not interested in vitamins anymore. I'm not interested in, and it's not that I'm not interested as a matter of a religious observance or anything like that. It's just not in my association. So by the grace of God, I've been liberated from all that. But as far as using it for a medicine or some kind of prophetic way, like peyote, right? So I tried peyote once many years ago, and tastes bad, feels nice. But people used to say it gives you spiritual visions. The same with DMT and all these other things. And I want to try and make it clear across the board that ultimately none of these things serve you, because they're all external, they're all catalysts. You don't need a catalyst to liberate your mind from temporal association. You need a miracle. Okay, so you'll find also James, who asked me a question. I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning him, since he's posed the question publicly. I think publicly, did he? Or maybe it was in my messenger. Sorry, James. No surnames. Who's been doing Alcoholics Anonymous for a long period of time. I did for a period of about 3 years. I went every Sunday, and I found it incredible. I was doing the course at the same time, and one of the fellas that was in the course community with me at the Healing Centre also was a sponsor. He'd been a long time sponsor for AA, and he'd set up on a weekend on a Sunday to do AA, and I was very grateful for that as well. Even though I'd been immediately relieved of the alcoholic addiction that I had, doing the AA helped me in a very specific kind of way to understand the nature of addiction better, and to wrap my head around what was actually going on there, rather than just arriving at the point of feeling like, oh, thank God that's been healed. There was a reasonability to it as how it had been healed, why it had been healed, and what actually I was healing. Not the addiction to alcohol, but the addiction to avoiding my eternal truth through the use of alcohol. And that comes around when you feel that anxiety or that inner irkiness. I need a drink, or I've got to roll a joint or something. And it's like, because you feel a certain way inside, you feel anxious, you feel this existential angst, like you're uncomfortable in your skin, and you want to adjust to it, right? Now, if you don't adjust to it, and you can do this through meditation, or it might just happen spontaneously while you're washing the dishes, but if you don't adjust to these anxiety attacks, and you enter into a moment with the Holy Spirit and offer that energy up, offer that energy through prayer, upwards through the Holy Spirit, for the healing of your mind that believes you're separate from God, you can begin to go into this kind of release mode where it's a little unfair because it happens to me instantaneously now. I don't have to sit for any period of time in meditation or prayer. My mind just boing, opens. But you can begin to enter in your own way into this sort of process of releasing all that energy, which will then draw you closer automatically in the background of what's going on actually in your conscious mind, to the threshold of consciousness, which is where knock and the door shall be opened. You're up against the veil. On the other side of that is the light, right? I would advise to do it through prayer and meditation rather than to have it through the dark night of the soul like that, through that sudden collapse or sudden release of the whole identity, or the whole anxious existential premise. But it's important that you have the experience, not how you have the experience, right? So whatever path you have to travel down in that regard, go for it, and I'm with you 100%. Although it's going to be terrifying, and I've done videos on that, and quite a few people have written back to me going, man, I've sat in meditation and entered into this completely terrifying sort of being sucked out of my consciousness, sucked out of my mind like you're going crazy moment, and they've recoiled from it, my ex-wife including. And if I can try to drum it in that that's actually a healthy thing, a good thing, it's a tiny moment of terror, like it's extreme terror. It's extreme. You don't know what's happening. You're totally out of control. And if you're a control freak, then you're not going to enjoy it all the more. But on the other side of that, it's just an instant. On the other side of that, like you can feel it coming, I think is what's worse. It'd be easier if Jesus sort of slapped you over the back of the head and went, and there it is, you know. And but you can feel it coming. When you meditate, you can feel this sort of, like this whooshing sort of thing. And it takes a bit of practice to learn to allow yourself to just go with it, right? Just to let it be, just to let it happen. And if you wanted to use that as a mantra, that would be an awesome mantra. If you've got mala beads or japa beads, prayer beads, whatever, 108 beads on a string, just let it happen. Just let it happen, or just let go, just let go, just let go. And you move your beads and do one bead. And just really get it in there. By the time you get to bead number 60, you'll probably feel this kind of certainty and understanding of it, right? Because it takes a bit to really get anything into the conscious mind that is truly helpful, because the ego's trying to keep you contained within little parameters like this. And I'm telling you, you need to allow your mind to expand outwards like this. And if my arms could keep going, it wouldn't stop. So drugs, alcohol, medicine, same thing, medicine, whatever. I mean, read the book of Job, you know, and in the Old Testament. I'm not an Old Testament advocate particularly, just because, not because it isn't helpful or useful, but just because some of those stories are so open to personal interpretation, and personal interpretation is open, dependent upon your life experience and what you comprehend and what you understand and where you find yourself. And so some of those things, when you read in the Old Testament, they're going to have this sort of meaning one year, and then 10 years down the track, you're going to read it in relation to other things you've been through in that 10-year period, and you're going to read it completely differently because you're different, right? Same with the Course in Miracles, same with the New Testament, same with the Bhagavad Gita, same with the Quran, well, the Quran's basically the Bible, but and 5 books, I think, by Muhammad. I might be wrong about that, open to correction. Cannabis, I was asked specifically to make a video about cannabis, about using marijuana. What do I think about that? And the only reference I have to really say what I think about that is if you are using it as a sacrament, like the Rastafari movement does, I mean, that's fine. But don't let it become an identity. Don't let it become something that you're completely dependent upon. You have to take it on board that eventually you're going to move through all of these different phases, all of these different evolutionary marker points in your own consciousness where things fall away and you become less and less in the world, and not or in the world, but less and less of it, right? Less dependent upon the weed, less dependent upon ideas of religiosity that uses the weed as a sacrament and all that sort of stuff, because the whole purpose of salvation is to liberate you completely from your associations with the world, right? In the world but not of it. I'm not a body, I am free. I'm still as God created me, I am spirit. Spirit don't need no marijuana. Spirit is marijuana. Spirit is everything. Right? Spirit is the dirt. Spirit is the reason that you need marijuana for. Spirit is everything. It's the life force. How you use it depends on the result you'll get. You know, if you use it to serve the dark side, then I'm a Star Wars fan, you know that. It's not a very good Darth Sidious, but if you use it to serve the dark side, let's say, which is the good and bad of the world, the duality of the world, the yin and yang of the world, you'll get the results of that. And I started this video by saying I totally advocate for you to get the results of your thinking, because that's how you learn, right? if you're afraid to get the results of your own thinking, you're going to be sitting on that fence and getting splinters up your butt, and it's just going to get uncomfortable, and you're going to find yourself stressing out because you'll be terrified to make any kind of decision in any particular way. And if you don't feel comfortable about following your own internal guidance yet, James, you better get off the fence, right? Because it's up to you to learn to make decisions based on your own internal guidance, and you're not going to truly trust your own internal guidance until you actually learn to pray for internal guidance that you can understand. All right, you won't ever get internal guidance you can't understand, but if your prayer is half-hearted, like a £2 prayer for a £10 problem, right? If your prayer is half-hearted, if it's just lip service, it's still going to be answered, but you're not going to be able to recognize the efficacy of that prayer because you haven't been willing to hand over the entirety of the problem, or the whole weight of that problem that seems to be affecting you, as an idea of my perception is off, right? I'm not seeing things right. I'm not seeing myself as a child of God. I'm not seeing myself as one with all things. I need a miracle. I need help. I need something, guidance, whatever you want to call that. The Holy Spirit already knows before you ask. Remember, the script is written for your salvation already. Right? You're not special. You're not, you know, we're all the same. We're all just, you know. So enjoy cannabis. If you still enjoy it and you don't want to give it up, I mean, don't give it up. I mean, just use it until you realize for yourself that it's no good. I mean, whatever drugs, whatever coping mechanism, if you're terrified to face the uncomfortable existential nature of your own internal inquiry, then you will probably continue in one form or another through superficial relationships, as I mentioned before, drugs, alcohol, whatever, to avoid looking at it. But I guarantee you, when you make a decision, no, I'm not going to adjust to my pain, I'm not going to adjust to this anxiety, I'm not going to reach for that drink, I'm not going to roll a joint, I'm not going to tell myself some story about how drugs get me closer to God, I'm not going to do any of that bullshit, right? I guarantee you, when you get to that point and you just say, no, I'm done with that, that your honesty in being done with that is what it is that is going to bring the alternative to that to you as a moving forward in your own process, all right? And stuff will begin to show up. It just will, because nature abhors a vacuum and there's no lack in God. God is everything, right? You can't put one thing aside without it being fulfilled by something else, because there's no emptiness, right? But if you leave an empty space by saying, no, I'm not doing that, I don't know what else I'm going to do instead of that, but I'm just not doing that, right? Then inflows what it is you can do instead of that, but which will serve your own best interests. You may not think it serves your own best interests at the time, because you are in a process of learning, and you have to learn to understand and integrate how it is that everything that comes to you is for your greater good, because you're learning to become the observer or the witness to your own transformative process in healing, which is guaranteed through our Father. Even though God knows of no need of healing, right? God is the life force of all things. But because you believe in, or I put my finger there, right? Keep it singular. Because I believe in sickness, pain, suffering, and death, and seem to be using the power of my mind miscreatively to manifest an entire world, universe, people out there that I can project onto as well, and all of that sort of stuff, and believe that it's true. I also have to have the anti-script of that, so I can come to believe that it's true, that I'm in a process of healing or a process of awakening, you know. And you'll begin to see things more energetically rather than physically. You'll begin to notice changes within yourself that carry a kind of a frequency about them, a subtle sort of sense of self that's like, oh, I'm done with that. I don't know how I know I'm done with that. I just know that I'm done with that. You know, you'll know that you've had the miracle. Oh. Thank you. Oh dear. So, thank you for that question, James. And I forget who it was that asked me about if I could make a video about cannabis. I hope that answers the questions. It is a sacrament until it isn't. All right. Ultimately, your own connection to the universe is, well, it's not really a sacrament, but it is. That's what you're looking for. That's what you want, and everything else will come unto you, including a new shirt if you need one. I love you guys, and thank you for the money. Tina and I are getting together next week, which is, I'm looking forward to it, to do a little bit of an edit on the inside introduction to the book, the little booklet that we give away for free, and then it's off to the printers. So we still need distributors. If you're someone who's keen with A Course in Miracles, you're in a community, in a course community, perhaps online, or maybe you've got a little group in your home once a week or twice a week or something, and you feel like you would like to distribute the little books in your country and mail them out around, remember, there's no lack. Jesus pays the bills, okay? If you've got to send a book and it costs you $1 to send the book, that $1 will come back to you 100-fold, and you've got to trust that. You've got to trust the process. You just put your hand up, because even that, in being a distributor, is part and parcel of you being able to witness to the efficacy of the divine nature of life operating in and through you. All right? There is no lack. Try and get that really like in your head. There's no lack. There's no emptiness. There's nothing missing. Give your life to God, and God will support it in all its ways, and whatever you do on behalf of the greater good, on behalf of the brotherhood of man, the sonship, the divine nature of life. Okay, it's a frequency, it's a vibration, and we'll awaken from this dream together laughing. Because we did. I love you guys. I really do. I love you so much. beyond these skin and bones, you know, like there's the truth. It's like ding, shining out there. Peace.